Why are you doing it? So many of us leave our day job. We want control of our time. We don't want to have a boss and we want freedom. The idea of scaling is making more money with less effort and less resources. So if you can imagine that, how can I grow the income of this business while reducing expenses and overhead? Like everything has risk, right? Everything has risk, but you can minimize it. When things go bad, you will find yourself working for free, long hours, hard hours, and pouring your own money into it. So you've got to think long and hard about whether it's worth it or not. We have eliminated developer risk almost completely. So it's just these types of deals that I'm doing now because I took too many big risks in the past. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that now, where they fudged their underwriting.
I do want to, you have such an amazing, cool story that I wanted you to share for those who haven't heard it. I know you've probably told it a million times, so I apologize, but I'm happy you do it again because I think it's such a great story. So, so first of all, Kathy, thank you for joining us on Real Estate Syndicate Live. Really, really appreciate you coming. And for those who have no idea who you are, which I can't imagine there's anybody that doesn't know who you are, you want to spend a little bit of time just telling who you are, but more importantly, please tell your story of how Real Wealth Network even became, because that's such a fascinating story for me.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, Real Wealth has now got 77,000 members. We've been helping busy professionals acquire real estate assets, mainly cash flowing properties in some of the fastest growing markets, with management in place to make for a more turnkey investment for busy professionals. We've been doing that, since 2003. And the origin story is that back then, obviously you discovered my prior life. I was a broadcaster. I worked at ABC7 and CNN and Fox News when it was just news, and you had to be balanced in your storytelling, in your news. Anyway, many, many, many eons ago. And then before that, modeling agency. And you're correct. I did that because I wanted to be an actress and a model. And I thought, since I can't seem to get a job, I'll just be an agent and submit myself. I'm kidding you not. This is true. But I ended up being more successful being an agent than being an actress. So, it is what it is. But anyway, so in 2003, well, in 97, I married my hunky husband, Rich. We were living the dream life. He was, and he had been in the X Games. He's bungee jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge in Half Dome. I mean, just a total stud. And he was also building his coaching program. He had personal fitness training studios. And I was able to be a stay-at-home mom, which was my dream. We had 2 little kids, and we had just bought our first house. And then in 2003, when he was on a book tour, a national book tour, he had just been on, I don't know, some big national show or something. And he noticed a freckle. He's a redhead with a lot of freckles, but he noticed this one weird freckle. He ended up getting it checked. Turned out to be melanoma. The doctor did further studies. And back then, remember, this is way over 20 years ago, 22 years ago, they didn't have the technology they have today. So it was basically a death sentence. And the doctor just said, you probably have 6 months to live. And this was just so shocking to be, at the top. I mean, on top, we just bought this house, 2 beautiful, healthy kids, book tour, all this. And suddenly just the brakes. Like, how could this big, strong man die from a freckle? But it was that moment that we used all the personal development we'd done. We met in a personal development course where it's like, your thoughts are power. It was just like, absolutely not. I don't accept this. But I've got to figure out how to take care of the finances while we go through this. And remember, I've been a stay-at-home mom, and it is really hard to get back into the workforce when you've been raising kids and changing diapers. But I still had this weekend radio show that I kept on the side to keep my broadcast career going. And it was just kind of I would just show up and talk, and it was terrible. But all of a sudden I thought, I'm going to pivot and learn this thing called passive income. That, remember, this is before podcast. No one talked about this stuff, but it was like, I'd heard about it. What is it? Do people really have it? Kiyosaki was talking about it. I'd read his book. I'd already met him back then. It's like, okay, I'm going to dive into this. And I just pivoted, put all of the show focus on how to create this thing called passive income. And that's how it started.
Such an amazing story, like just taking that adversary situation and just making the most of it. So, well, I appreciate that. As always, if you guys have specific questions about for Kathy, please drop them in the chat and we'll get going with it. But I know you've written a bunch of books, Kathy. I know it was Retire Rich with Rentals, and you've got your podcast stuff, Bigger Pockets. You're rocking your Bigger Pocket shirt today
I
on the
am
market, Bigger
doing.
Pockets co-host. But you just released this new book. It's Scaling Smart, how to design a self-managing business. I'm still in the middle of reading it. I got it over the weekend. It's really something near and dear to my heart. But I figured we'd talk a little bit about scaling, especially for real estate syndicators. I know you were doing syndications as well as single family. You're doing a lot of stuff actually. But maybe we can start because I'm always been fascinated. You've been fascinated with the passive income. I've always been fascinated about how to build a self-managing company.
Mm.
But I figured maybe start with defining some stuff. Like, what exactly is a self-managing company? Does it even exist? And maybe more importantly, why should I even care?
Yeah, yeah. Well, ooh, it does exist because we have one now, and I'm living proof that let's put it this way. Rich walks people through this thing called future self. And if you haven't done it, you need to do it. He's just like masterful at this thing of taking you into the future and seeing your ideal life. And it's on our website somewhere. If you go to Real Wealth, he's got it recorded there. But we also do it every January if you want to join us. But back a long time ago, I did this future self with him. And I saw myself walking into our business, and I was just walking in and watching all of these brilliant people working. And I just remember I saw myself in the future just going from desk to desk saying, "Good job, great job, wow, amazing." And then walking out like I didn't need to be there. And in reality, that was not the case. I was doing everything. And I don't want to say everything because Rich was my he my chief support guy is what he called himself. He's the one who put our website together, and he turned my radio show into a podcast the day that podcast came out. He was always helping behind the scenes. But between the two of us, we were doing everything from writing emails to planning events to speaking at those events and finding teams, and I was flying all over the country. Just the vision was not the reality. And so here we are 20 years later, where Rich has been able to take me as a visionary. He's a business coach and it has a business degree. And finally, when I had made enough messes as a visionary, visionaries tend to make messes because we have big ideas but have no idea how to put structure or systems around that. Finally I begged him in 2008 when everything crashed. Can you coach me? Can you be my business partner? And can we survive as a couple in working together? These were big questions we had. But we did it, and there's been ups and downs and challenges and all across the board. But today, I have that company where if we had a physical office, we're virtual, I could walk in and pat each employee on the back and be like, man, good job. You're all doing this better than I ever could have. And then walk out. In fact, they're having a business meeting right now, and I'm not on it because I'm here. So it is possible. And everything in this book is amazing that Rich and I could write it together. But we put each of us had sticky notes, and we just each wrote all the game changer moments, all the things that changed us from being a slave to our company to our company working for us.
I like that phrase, game changer moments. Can you share maybe what are the first two that come to your mind, like just top of list of the game changers?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the first chapter is basically about the why. And this is a piece that's so, everyone talks about what's your business vision, mission, purpose, all those things. But so often our personal values and goals are not in there. So the very first chapter of the book is like, why are you doing it? So many of us leave a day job where we don't, we want to work, we want control of our time, we don't want to have a boss, and we want freedom. We leave that 9 to 5 to start a company where you're working 24/7 for a horrible boss, which is you, you couldn't be a meaner boss, the hours that you force yourself to work and the things that we put ourselves through as entrepreneurs. So, um, so the first chapter is really getting super clear about why you're doing it. And if it is, and once you have that, like for us, it was freedom of time. It was the ability to be with our children, the ability to not have to live paycheck to paycheck, but to grow wealth and have savings, have peace of mind. When in fact, we created completely the opposite in the beginning, where we had no time, we were working all the time and had no time for our kids, none of the things that we had really started it for. So the first part of the book is like getting so clear so that you can build a business to support that personal vision that you have. So that's first. And then second is the same for the business. What is the purpose for the business? What is the mission? Most people don't want to work for you just so they can make you rich. That's generally, I've met people who are servants, right? They want to do that, but most people don't, right? So how do you bring in a team that's as excited as you are, as committed as you are to the vision of, or to the business? And it really comes down to that, having a clear mission that they're all excited about and that they also participate in the benefits of it, and the downside. So, if there's profit sharing and there's no profits, nobody gets that extra check, right? But if there's a mission, here's what we're going to do. One of our first missions was, we are going to donate $1 million to the charities that we decide we want to do together. Our millennials were all over it. They were so excited about that, and we're almost there. That was one thing. But then the other was to have, I think it was 50,000 people who had experienced real wealth, where we had really made a difference and changed their lives somehow to where they could enjoy their lives more. Real wealth, we define as having the money and the time to live life the way you want to. And our team, and it's like you're a part of it. Like, you are a member of Real Wealth. If you're a team member, we want to see you living your dreams. And believe me, that got them on board too. So they are just as excited about being on this ship, because they know where it's going.
Yeah, and I learned that from you and Rich, the whole profit sharing, because you guys still do that, right? Like there's some percentage of, I know you
Yep,
guys, not to give away a formula, but at some point above a certain level, you guys are sharing those profits with your employees and your team members, which is pretty
for
pretty
sure.
awesome.
Yep.
You'd think that's sort of common practice, but a lot of people don't even think through that. Is it necessary to scale the business in order to have them self-managing? Those kind of two synonymous words. When you think of a self-managing company, do you think of a company that's scaled? Because some people are afraid of the word scaling. I think, like you say, I want
Yeah.
to scale. Like, I don't want to scale. I don't want to grow. Are those
Oh, I
synonymous?
totally get it.
Yeah.
And you know why you wouldn't want to? Because the idea is it's even going to be more overwhelming. It's going to be even harder. You're going to be working more hours. Why on earth would you want that? And I remember having that conversation with Rich. I don't want to scale. I don't want to grow. I'm already maxed. And that's because I didn't understand what scaling meant. So one way to kind of describe it, we had our book launch party at a rock climbing gym. And most people who go rock climbing for the first time are totally muscling their way up, especially men. They just think that they could pull themselves up by their arms, and they're burned out within a few minutes. And that's how it is when you're trying to run a business doing most of the work. Whereas when you really learn how to scale that wall, you're using your whole body. You've got your legs that are really pushing you up versus your arms pulling you up. And then there's technique. That's the difference of scaling to where it actually becomes easier. And I could beat the biggest, strongest bodybuilder up the rock, and I'm not as strong, but because I know how to scale. I know how to scale that wall. And it's a total, so the idea of scaling is making more money with less effort and less resources. So if you can imagine that, how can I grow the income of this business while reducing expenses and overhead?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah, I love the analogy of the rock climbing. One of my coaches, Dan Martell, talks about the pain line. It's almost like it's like if you have a knife to your throat, there's no way you're going to move forward because it just represents more pain, a little bit more perhaps
Right, right.
of a thing.
Exactly. Why would I want to
Uh,
do that?
yeah. Paul asked, have you ever tried to scale and failed? And if so, did the fail happen? How did the fail happen? That's from Paul. Let me say that again. Have you ever tried to scale and failed? If so, why did it fail? Is it
I've tried to
capital? Is it?
grow. I tried to grow and I failed. So the difference between growing and scaling, growing is when you're taking on more projects, which means, oh my gosh, I need more help. I need more resources. I need more money. And your all your time and your resources and your money, it increases while your profits may or may not. Just look at the US government, it's like the expenses increase, but is the income? No. So that's a recipe for bankruptcy, right? So yes, have I tried to grow too fast? Again, that's the first chapter, is the risk of growing too fast versus scaling. And there's this whole section on there. Let me see where I'll just read a few things and you'll probably relate. Um, the dangers of growing too fast, operational overload. It's like running a marathon with your shoes from second grade. You don't have the systems in place for the next level. You start slipping up on quality. Too much financial investment for the outcome, and you haven't really thought through, is this financial investment really going to 10x the business, or is it just going to suck all that money out? Stretching the team too thin. This is a huge one. Trying to grow too fast. Like I said, with those second grade shoes, you're going to burn out your team. Culture shifts as you hire people that they may not have the same culture that you had when you started that was so special. I'm seeing that with a few companies right now. They're burning out their employees and they're leaving. They don't want to be there anymore. Debt dilemmas. Yeah, like too much debt. We are seeing that, right, in the multifamily space. Just taking on too much debt or the wrong kind of debt. And people didn't have to do that. It's just they did. Decision making bottlenecks, again, if you grow too much. So have I grown too fast? Absolutely. I already told you guys how we got off on chapter 2, which is, what is your business about? Our business was about helping busy professionals build a real estate portfolio of turnkey rental properties nationwide in the fastest growing markets. Guess what I syndicated in 2012? A wine village. I decided to trust some developer and do something neither of us had ever done that was very sexy and cool. That all for all the right reasons. My attorney said this was the best deal he'd ever seen. It's basically tasting rooms for wineries that want to be, it was, right off the freeway, wineries that want to be seen. So they would pay more for these tasting rooms like a commercial building. Well, because it was so weird and different, we couldn't get financing for it. Our financing backed out. We were stuck with the land and all these entitlements and no money. So I still have that land today. This is over 12 years later, still telling the investors, we're going to figure this out. But my God, has that been difficult and time consuming, and the money I've poured into it and the time from one stupid decision of trying to grow too fast without the systems in place. Same thing when someone brought me a resort property in Costa Rica and I raised a lot of money for that deal, and it was sexy and beautiful, and it is incredible. It's called Rise Costa Rica, but again, we're years after business plan and way more expenses because neither of us had built a resort in Costa Rica before. Dumb, 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 dumb. So yes, I have gone to my investors and apologized on a million times, cried on investor calls. This was dumb. I'm so sorry. We're not doing this anymore. We stay in our lane. But yeah, I've tried to grow too fast and I failed a lot for that because of
You've
that.
mentioned a couple times now the importance of implementing processes and systems before you start scaling. It sounds like. Can you talk about maybe, what do you think some of the essential systems that syndicators or real estate folks should have in place before they attempt to scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, is your business plan, right? What are we about? What's our company about? And having a very clear business plan that includes, and you can search it, you can look in our book, but you can also search the basics of a business plan. But it usually includes the marketing plan, where you want to be in 3 to 10 years, the 10-year vision, the 3-year The 1 year, super clear where we're going, what we're about, is step one. And then from there, the org chart that's going to take you there. What's the structure? And sometimes when you're just starting out, and maybe just you and your spouse or whatever, another partner, who's the next best hire? This is always the hardest part. What's the next hire that's going to take us to that next level? Because you don't have a company if you don't have people. Our third chapter of the book is all about the people. You don't have a company if you don't have good people. So the org chart, when we first did this, our business coach was like, you need a good org chart. And that means writing down everything you do, every piece of everything that you do or the other people in your company do, and put it, you could do sticky notes. That's a great way to do it. That's how we wrote our book. Just all the jobs that everyone is doing. And then you organize it like a puzzle of, usually there's sections, there's marketing, there's sales, there's product quality, there's finance, legal, HR. These are, basically the categories. I might have forgotten some, but all those sticky notes kind of fall under one of those categories. And then within it, the job in that. So marketing, it might be my podcast, it might be our events, email, whatever, we're doing that has to do with marketing. And so that you're able to sort of organize. From there, you can list on it like 1 to 10, which of these jobs that you're doing or that other people are doing are you amazing at? Like, you're better than anybody else and you love it. This is the key. Like, what are the things you absolutely love and no one else could do? You are born to do it. That's a 10. And what are the things that just suck? Like, you're terrible at it, takes you forever, you don't like it. That
Sucks
would
the
be,
life out of you.
yes, yes. That's one that you would put as a number one. And then that's who you want to hire for. The stuff you're not good at, takes you forever, and is going to really screw up your business because your attention is going there. For Rich and me, bookkeeping for sure. That was one of the first things. Then just kind of the detail stuff, our personal assistant. Boy, is that a game changer when you get a great personal assistant to help you. Someone, usually visionaries are idea people. So to have the opposite, the person who can take those ideas and make the checklist and create the systems for you for that specific job. If you're not good at systems, then your first person might be someone who is, and that was our second hire. But just kind of going through the list till eventually you're only left with the 10s, only the things you love doing and have a superpower for. And then everybody else who's doing the other things is a 10. It's what they were made for. So
That's a good
that's
point. You
structure.
just brought up a good point. Do you do your own process and systems, or do you have the person who's already on your team put the process and systems in place for you? Like, who's actually the one putting these together?
It just depends. I'm lucky that Rich is more of a systems guy. So he brought in a lot of really cool technologies and things like Basecamp. We use that's like a project management software where everyone can kind of tap in and see what everybody's up to. There's lots of great projects like that. He brought in 90.io, which is an EOS program that keeps your meetings really tight and effective and within 90 minutes, just once a week. But for me, I literally had a brain scan. My daughter and I did it for fun, and it's cool. You,
Like,
you
who
like take,
doesn't? Who doesn't?
like, it was fun. It was weird, but it turned out we both have an identical brain that is so entrepreneurial, so idea focused, but actually it lights, basically when you're doing exercise, it'll light up parts of your brain. The part of our brain that is the secretary, you would say the assistant, actually didn't light up at all. Like, he's like, this is just not there. You don't have it. So, that I had to hire for that. Who's the person who can help organize me? Because I'm not going to create the systems. I don't know how. I'm not built that way. So yes, that's why like our second hire was somebody who loves doing that, just obsesses over checklists and structure. And she could pull it out of my brain and put it into some kind of order. So just depending on how you're built, you may be able to do it yourself or you may need to hire someone else.
And they exist. That's always the surprising thing for me. Like whatever you hate to do, there's somebody out there that just loves to do it.
Loves it. Yep.
David had a great question because I was going to ask you about your unique structure because you and Rich on your org chart, you guys are co-CEOs, which is not a common structure by any means. So David asks, David's a part of a husband and wife team. And so he's asking, what have you learned that was necessary for you and Rich to work out, to scale, have an amazing business, and also have an amazing relationship?
Well, the co-CEO model is an old bio that you found, and that did lead us to a near divorce.
There you go.
So, and I'm actually not kidding. It was terrible for our relationship. It was a business coach who was like, you guys would make great co-CEOs, but no, it was very, very challenging because who's really in charge, and so we decided, and it was a hard decision, and it was painful that I would step down as CEO because I'm not built to manage people. That's not my strength. But instead, I was the founder, I was the creator. The idea came from me, but the execution of that idea, I wasn't really needed anymore. I really wasn't. We've got acquisitions people, we've got the property analysis people, we've got the ones overseeing the property managers, and like there are plenty of people who could do the execution better than me. So one by one, I was replaced by people with, more skill for that specific thing. And for a moment, I was feeling really lost. Like, well, what am I supposed to do? And that's when I got the call from Bigger Pockets to be a co-host of their program. So it's like as soon as you let go, that's when the opportunity shows up for your superpower. And so anyway, Rich is the CEO now, but I'm hoping that within 3 or 4 years, he'll be replaced and then we'll be retired. But in the meantime, that was a better decision for us. But working as a couple together, what we found is that if you have separate responsibilities, it's a lot easier than having one work for the other. And for a long time, I was the CEO and Rich was the COO. I was the visionary, he was the integrator, and he was supposed to be putting my vision into action. But on the org chart, I was on top, basically. And he just didn't thrive that way. It just wasn't good for our relationship for me to be his boss. That's when we tried co-CEO, that made it worse. And then it was like, you know what? I've done my job. I created this, I'm out. And it's much, much better. And then I could focus on a new thing, which ended up being I'll just run the syndication department as a separate company. And so he's running the realty side. Now I've almost replaced myself in the syndication side. So my next will be a coaching program that I'm really excited about. So
That's all. Well, you have a coaching program. Sign me up. Sign me up.
yay.
How large is the team right now? Justin was asking, how large is your team?
We're still pretty small. It's about 20 employees and about 20 contractors.
Let's go, Paula, right after that. How long did it take for your company to grow to what it is today? Do you run it differently? Do you run into difficulties growing in some cities versus others? Let's say that again. Let's start with the first. How long did it take for your company to grow to what it is today?
We would have grown a lot faster and scaled a lot faster if I hadn't, followed the shiny objects. If like I came across a great idea, which was to educate people on passive income because that's what I wanted to learn, and then help them build their portfolio. It's simple, right? And then I started to do all these crazy things. You guys, I even did a syndication for a tech company. Like what? I became too well known too quickly when Rich turned my radio show into a podcast. We had listeners in 27 countries, and those people were just begging me to take their money, millions of dollars. And it was too much, too fast. I didn't know how to handle all of that. And that's a lot of influencers today are facing the same thing, too much notoriety before they're ready, before they have the systems. So if Rich had been able to harness me as a visionary, which is very hard to harness a visionary, it's very hard. We would have grown, scaled much faster. But we've been doing this 20 years, and so we've got our groove now. 20 years, I guess you could say it took, but we could have done it faster.
I know it's tough
Yeah.
sometimes because Kathy, you still look like you're in your 30s or something. So it's always tough to think that you've been around for 20 years. Um, there's like a delicate balance between growing the company and scaling and then also managing risk. I feel like there's a lot of people want to go grow or
Yeah.
scale. And so they also feel like they've got to be aggressive. So can you talk a little bit about the balance in terms of scaling and growing versus, how aggressive or how do you actually manage that risk?
Yeah, as we've gotten older and as we've made lots of mistakes and growing too fast and taking on projects that weren't in our, in our wheelhouse, it's so, oh my gosh, I just forgot the question. What was the question?
Yeah, the balance. So like on the one
Balance.
hand, there's
Oh,
there's
of
a
risk. Yeah,
delicate
yeah, yeah.
balance between managing risk and scaling. So can you talk a little
Yeah.
about how should, especially syndicators, they're out there and they've got to underwrite deals and they got to do all this stuff and
Yes.
like they want to be aggressive over there. How do you balance
Yes.
that with, with scaling?
No, for sure. And now because I've made mistakes in the past, we are very risk averse. As you know, you're working with our in-house attorney, and she's so tough because she's protecting me in every which way. I have surrounded myself with people whose job it is to protect me and our investors because I was sort of so reckless before, and before I, had the systems. So the best thing I can tell you is that like everything has risk, right? Everything has risk, but you can minimize it. When things go bad, you will find yourself working for free, long hours, hard hours, and pouring your own money into it. So you've got to think long and hard about whether it's worth it or not. I'm pretty risk averse now. But with that said, if you take on a project, like I said, everything has risk, and you've really looked at it from all angles, and everybody knows here's the risks and here's the upside, then you're making those decisions together. Uh, but today, we're like I said, we have so eliminated our like reduced risk. We took on a project. Our current syndication is taking over a project that someone else took risk on, right? These are the kind of opportunities. Oftentimes, when you come in as a developer, the first developer fails because it ends up being harder or more expensive than they thought. This was a farmer who had some land in Oregon, got it for real cheap back in 2008. Land was almost free. Decided to get into development when he's a farmer. It took him this long to get the roads, the infrastructure, everything in, and he just put up his hands when rates went up. He's like, I'm done. Well, that's when we came in. We got the land on an option. So we don't have to buy the land. We don't have to get a loan, raise $10 million to buy the land. We are only had to put up $1 million for the option on the land. We can build the houses and sell the houses and pay for the land upon the sale. So like we have eliminated developer risk almost completely. So it's just these types of deals that I'm doing now because I took too many big risks in the past. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that now where they fudged their underwriting. It's like optimism is a beautiful thing. And I used to be an optimistic person, but when it comes to real estate, it is a hindrance because things won't always go as expected. They usually won't. If you don't have enough reserves, if you didn't underwrite it properly, if you didn't account for the fact that, yeah, rates could go up, things fluctuate, a pandemic could happen. Who could see that? But there were people who knew that something bad could happen and they set themselves up properly. That's, it's you've got to just really question if it's worth it, if the benefit outweighs the potential risk.
You're probably not as in, I was going to ask you an underwriting question, but now that you've scaled I know you're a visionary, so I'm not even sure how deep you get in the underwriting. But one of the things that's always been fascinating to me, so I'd love your thoughts on this, is that everybody has quote unquote conservative underwriting, right? And it's gotten to the point where I feel like everybody's conservative, so everybody's kind of the same. So you're more conservative now than you used to be. Are there some things that you do that you would literally say, hey, look, I'm really conservative compared to the median? So I mean, what is conservative underwriting, I guess,
Yeah,
from your point of
I
view?
haven't seen conservative underwriting. I've seen situations where, sorry about that, people aren't projecting enough reserves. They're expecting things to go one way instead of understanding that um, we don't know. We don't know if we're going to be in a recession next year. We don't know what's coming. You can't just assume an exit cap rate. How could you? How do we know where things are going to be? We have no idea. And so unless you are underwriting to the unknown, and most institutional investors will have several scenarios that they underwrite, not just one. That, here's my business plan and here's what I think it's going to be. You don't know, you're guessing. So it should be several scenarios. If it goes this way, this is our plan. If it goes this way, this is our plan. But that all the underwriting I've seen is it's like one way, we're going to do this, and this is going to be the exit cap, and this is going to be the rent. You don't know. You don't know what the rents are going to be. You have no idea, but
You're
right? I mean, we're seeing that now. I saw so many projects come across my desk where what they were projecting absolutely did not happen.
I used to ask people about how do they calculate exit caps, and I kept hearing, oh, it's part science, part whatever. And I'm like, you're just
Guessing.
basically making it up. I mean, you're
You're making
literally,
it up.
the pro forma is really making it up. Let's get back to, I want to keep talking about your Scaling Smart book. Again, I don't, it sounds like a thing. I know you've been around the block for a few years. You've gone through, you've gone through a lot of market cycles. How do you factor in the market cycle when you're deciding whether to scale or not? Does it matter where we are in the cycle, or is scaling is a good idea no matter what?
I think it matters a lot. I mean, you look at someone like Brian Burke, who was very, very aware of the market cycles, and he sat it out, man. He sat out the last 3 years because he knew. And if you got burned over the last few years, you'll know too next time. You can see it, you can feel it, you just look at the underwriting like, wow, this just really doesn't make sense. They're just pushing it, just pushing it. We know that if your LTV is too high, if you're borrowing too much money and things don't go to plan, you're in trouble. Everyone knows high leverage is risky, but everyone was doing it. So in the part of the cycle where it's the exuberance phase and just like, well, everyone's doing it. Well, everyone, when I was a mortgage broker in 2006, everyone was giving bad loans too, didn't make it right, but everyone was doing it. So it kind of just takes that moment of I take a breath, and it's a lot of discipline and management, because for years I was watching every single day on Facebook somebody getting a deal, and I would be like, I didn't find a deal. So like, what did they see that I didn't see? And what they did was fudge the numbers a little bit. It's just kind of like we said, we're going to just assume rents are going to go up. We're just going to assume cap rates are going to go down, whatever it is. But it's like, well, what if it doesn't? What if it doesn't? And it's no fun. It's no fun to be that person. But I'll tell you guys, I had a real estate investor who would come to every meeting, every pitch meeting. And when I saw her in there, I'd be like, she's going to ask me these hard questions. And I hated it because I never had the answers. So finally I was like, wait, I should just call her in advance and say, what are you going to ask me so that I'm ready? And then I hired her.
Mm.
I hired the doubter, the person who sees all the things that can go wrong. And it's so not my personality. But you've got to have somebody on your team who does that, and who will challenge your assumptions. And guess what? Now Mauricio has to deal with her because she's questioning everything he's doing.
I love Lisa. Nothing but love for Lisa.
Yeah.
It's funny because I see it from both sides. Like over the last couple of years, I've seen clients who, like you, it's like pencils down and I can't find anything and I'm underwriting and just nothing pencils. And then in the same time period, I've had people who just find deal after deal after deal after deal. I'm like, okay, one of these two, and I'm not picking sides, but I can't imagine both of you are right. They're there or they're not, but it's always been fascinating to see those two sides. Where do you think we are, Kathy, in the cycle? I like to ask this question to everyone. I know there's no such thing as a real estate market as a whole, but what are your general thoughts on, the Fed tomorrow,
Yeah.
supposedly, rates are going to come down, the Fed funds anyway. Where do you think we are? Are we kind of at the bottom and starting to turn, or give me your sort of like high view analysis of where we are?
I think we're kind of in a pickle, really. We're in a little bit of a pickle. Normally at this time, when the Fed is lowering rates, it would be because something bad has happened and there needs to be a stimulus. So what the bad thing is that has happened is there's been less job growth. Inflation is coming back down to earth, back closer to the 2%, but job growth has slowed down a lot. So that's kind of the bad thing. So the good thing is that means they're probably going to cut rates. The bad thing is that we don't know how many more job losses are coming. And that would absolutely affect real estate. So there's lots of people who think, oh, well, it could be a soft landing and we should be fine. But again, we don't know. So it's really hard to, we've got a new administration that may or may not affect things coming up. I just think we're still in an unknown place. I just listened to James Wang. I think that's his name. He's wonderful. The Fed guy.
Joseph Wang.
Joseph Wang. Um, and he was on, I don't know, some news show. And he was saying that the Fed really is in a pickle because as we lower rates, that's going to affect foreign investment, that's going to pull out of the US. So it's a lot more complicated than us mere, humans, mortals can understand what's coming. It's not as simple as saying, oh, well, the Fed's lowering rates, so now it's going to be a booming market. That may be true, but it also may not be true. So the way I look at it is very simply, we do know that there is one major issue, and that is affordability. We know that we have people who would love to live in a home, own that home, or rent the home and be able to afford it. And that's just gotten worse and worse and worse. It's going to get a little bit better now that rates are going down, but at the same time, prices, as soon as rates go down, prices are going to go up, and we're going to be in the same mess. So no matter what happens to the economy, people usually want to live indoors. So I felt really comfortable over the last few years of uncertainty providing that need, catering to that need of affordable housing. How do we bring on more supply and not in an you got to really understand your market because some markets got oversupplied. So how do we bring on new supply where there isn't a whole lot of competition of other people trying to bring on new supply, which is why our current syndication in Oregon is like totally off the map. Most of you won't even know where it is, but we're the only game in town. When we first started building in Bozeman, Montana, probably 4 years ago, we were the only builder in town. So kind of going to these areas where the competition isn't there, but the need is. We don't, if you go in where the institutional investors are not, they're putting their money elsewhere, then there's opportunity, especially if you're following the local job growth, the local population growth, infrastructure growth of that area, and you don't have a lot of competition, you're steps ahead of everybody else. Like I said, in Bozeman, because we were sort of the only builder at the time. Now, ever since Yellowstone, came out, now everybody wants to be in Montana. But back then, people thought we were crazy. What are you doing in Bozeman? But we were able to get the land so cheap because nobody was hunting for it. And so we can provide a better product because we bought right. So there's always opportunity. Like you said, there's always opportunity. You just have to be really careful about the market, the specific market you're in that would be less affected by the bigger, macroeconomics.
Well, Kathy, I've already kept you a little bit longer than I anticipated. I'm assuming I'm going to put the link to your book I put it at the Amazon if there's an easier way, but your book, Scaling Smart, what's the best way to get a hold of the book, and what's the best way to get a hold of you, or tell folks how they can get a hold of you?
Sure. Scaling Smart is, you can get it at Bigger Pockets or you can get it on Amazon. Um, then my show is the Real Wealth Show. Our company is realwealth.com. You can join for free and get access to all our free education there.
An amazing company. Kathy, I know, this was short notice, so really, really appreciate you jumping in. Always love talking to you and speaking. Are you still doing your goals thing every January? Because I'm going to pump that. I went a couple years ago. It's amazing. And you get to experience Rich's exercise where he takes you into the future. But by the way, go to the website. Go find that if you can, or find it on YouTube or whatever. Are you doing that still every year, or you stopped doing that?
We're gonna be doing some more retreats, some Scaling Smart retreats, helping you scale your business. And again, scale does not mean growing. It just means creating more income with less effort.
If you'd like to join us live on these episodes and have a chance to get your specific question answered, you can simply go to realestatesyndicatorlive.com and register to be live on the show. Hope to see you then.